Have you ever noticed how words can expose the truth, even when someone is trying to hide it? An unfaithful woman doesn't always confess with actions. Many times, she reveals herself through what she says without even realizing it. In this talk, I'm going to show you the exact phrases and patterns that almost always give her away. When someone is hiding something, their biggest enemy is silence. Silence makes them uncomfortable because silence gives space for suspicion. This is why, very often, an unfaithful woman will talk more than she needs to. She will explain herself even when no one has asked for an explanation. And what's interesting is that most of the time, she doesn't even realize she is doing it. It's an unconscious behavior, a defense mechanism built into her words. Think about it. When a person is truly innocent, they don't feel the need to prove anything. If you ask where they've been, they'll simply answer, "I was at the store." They don't feel the pressure to add unnecessary details like, "I was at the store, the one near the old gas station. And then I ran into a friend from school, and I even bought you something while I was there." The extra explanation may sound harmless, even sweet, but in reality, it often signals nervousness. That nervousness doesn't come from honesty. It comes from the fear of being caught. This pattern shows up in small conversations, the kind you might overlook at first. For example, you casually ask, "What took you so long?" A faithful partner might shrug and say, "Traffic was bad." But the unfaithful one tends to over-defend. "Oh, traffic was crazy. And then my phone died, so I couldn't text you. And after that, I bumped into a coworker who wanted to chat. And by the way, I even thought of calling from their phone, but it was too quick." Do you see the difference? One answer is simple and straightforward. The other feels like a list of excuses packed into one sentence. And what's fascinating is that she doesn't even realize she's layering her words like this. She thinks she's being careful, but in reality, she's exposing herself through her attempt to sound believable. Psychologists have studied this kind of behavior, and it's closely tied to guilt and anxiety. When someone is telling the truth, their brain is relaxed. They are not worried about whether their story will be believed. But when someone lies, their brain has to work harder. They have to create a story, remember the details, make sure it sounds consistent, and at the same time watch your reaction to see if you buy it. That's a lot of mental effort. Stability is trust. To cover the nervousness, they keep talking, hoping that the flood of words will distract you from the gaps in their story. In reality, the more they explain, the more suspicious it sounds. It's like putting too much perfume on. What was supposed to be pleasant becomes overpowering and obvious. Now, let's look at how this plays out in relationships. Imagine you text her at night, asking why she didn't pick up your call. Instead of simply saying, "Sorry, I was busy," she types back a long paragraph. "Oh, I was in the shower when you called, and then my mom needed something, and then my phone was charging in the other room, and when I saw it, it was already late, so I thought maybe you'd be asleep, and that's why I didn't call back." The excuses pile up like bricks in a wall, but what she doesn't realize is that the wall itself reveals what she's trying to hide. Her instinct is to over-defend, because deep down she knows there's something to defend against. This kind of defensiveness disguised as innocence isn't always loud. Sometimes it comes out in her tone. If you ask a simple question like, "Where were you?" and she suddenly reacts with, "Why are you asking me that? Don't you trust me? I already told you where I was." Notice the sharpness. Instead of calmness, there's pressure in her voice. That defensiveness is another sign. Innocence doesn't fight back like that. Innocence is calm because it has nothing to prove. Guilt, on the other hand, feels attacked even when no attack is there. What's most dangerous here is that these little defensive habits can start to condition you. If you hear them often enough, you might start to think, maybe I am overthinking. Maybe she really does, just like giving extra details. That's how manipulation creeps in. The over-explanation starts to sound normal. But here's the truth. People don't change the rhythm of their communication without a reason. If she was once straightforward and now she's always piling on details, that shift is a signal. If she was once calm and now she reacts defensively to innocent questions, that shift is a signal. Change in language often reflects change in loyalty. Another powerful clue is when her explanations come out of nowhere. You didn't even ask a question, but she volunteers an excuse. For example, she might say, "Oh, by the way, if I don't answer later, it's because my phone might die. I forgot to charge it this morning." Notice that you didn't ask about her phone battery. She's planning an excuse ahead of time. It looks innocent on the surface, but underneath it's a form of covering tracks. That's the subconscious at work. The guilty mind rehearses problems before they even arrive because it knows the truth might get exposed. All of this builds into one key lesson. When words are used like armor, that's when you need to pay attention. Defensiveness, unnecessary details, and excuses that come too quickly are not signs of transparency. They're signs of fear, and fear almost always points to something being hidden. The faithful partner trusts silence. The unfaithful one tries to fill silence with words. The faithful partner answers with simplicity. The unfaithful one buries the truth under layers of unnecessary explanation. The faithful partner doesn't need to prove innocence. The unfaithful one keeps trying to prove it, not realizing that, in the attempt, they reveal exactly what they're running from. One of the clearest signs that something is wrong in a relationship is when a woman begins to project her own guilt onto her partner. Instead of addressing her own actions, she turns the spotlight around and shines it directly at him. It's a classic defense strategy, and most of the time she doesn't even realize she's doing it. When a woman is being unfaithful, criticism becomes her tool. She repeats phrases like, "You don't trust me," or "You're imagining things," not because they are true, but because they allow her to escape accountability. Think about how this works in everyday life. If someone accuses you of something you didn't do, your first instinct is not anger, it's confusion. You'll calmly say, "No, that's not true." But when guilt is present, calmness disappears. The guilty person wants to redirect attention as fast as possible. That's why an unfaithful woman might respond to a simple question with sharp criticism. "Why are you so paranoid? Why do you always doubt me? You're the one with the problem, not me." By attacking, she puts you on the defensive. Suddenly, instead of focusing on her behavior, you're busy defending yourself against accusations of jealousy, insecurity, or mistrust. It's a clever way to reverse the roles in the conversation, but it's also one of the biggest red flags. This shift often begins subtly. Maybe in the past, she used to reassure you if you were worried. If you asked, "Who were you out with?" she'd smile and say, "Just some friends, nothing to worry about." But now, the tone changes. The same question is met with irritation. "Why do you always have to check up on me? Don't you trust me at all?" That irritation isn't natural. It's not the irritation of someone who's annoyed. It's the irritation of someone who's being reminded of their own betrayal. The question stings because it touches the truth she's trying to bury. Projection is another part of this behavior. Sometimes, an unfaithful woman will accuse her partner of doing the very things she's guilty of. She might say, "I feel like you don't tell me everything." Or, "Sometimes I wonder if you're talking to someone else." On the surface, these statements look like worries, but in reality, they are reflections of her own actions. Psychologists explain this as a defense mechanism. When a person feels guilty, they relieve their anxiety by accusing others of the same thing. It feels safer to put suspicion outward rather than face it inward. This kind of criticism and projection can wear a partner down over time. At first, he might fight back and say, "No, I do trust you. I'm not paranoid. But after repeated attacks, he starts doubting himself. He wonders, maybe I am overreacting. Maybe I am imagining things. This is how emotional manipulation works. The unfaithful woman doesn't just hide her behavior. She shapes her partner's mind to believe he's the one at fault. In psychology, this is known as gaslighting, making someone doubt their own reality by constantly challenging their perception of events. And the cruel part is that she doesn't always plan it consciously. It comes out naturally, almost automatically, because the guilt inside her is looking for a way out. Another way this shows up is through constant comparisons. She might say things like, "Other boyfriends don't act like you," or "My friend's partner doesn't get so jealous." These comparisons are meant to make you feel small, to make you believe you're the unreasonable one, but really, they are shields. She knows something inside her actions could be questioned, so she hides it by putting the blame on your character. She pushes the idea that the problem isn't her behavior, it's your attitude. And the more you believe it, the more control she gains over the situation. Let's look at a simple example. Imagine you notice she's texting late at night and you casually ask, "Who are you texting?" A faithful woman might simply answer, "Oh, just my cousin," or "A friend from work." But an unfaithful one might react sharply. "Why are you always watching me? Don't you trust me even a little?" This is exactly why I hate telling you things. The anger is not proportionate to the question. The question was harmless, but the answer carries hostility. Why? Because in her mind, your innocent observation feels like an accusation. She knows she's guilty, so even light curiosity feels like pressure. The best way to release that pressure, in her view, is to push it back onto you. Over time, this cycle of criticism can become so strong that the relationship feels upside down. You start feeling guilty for asking basic questions. You avoid bringing up your concerns because you don't want to start another fight. She, on the other hand, feels safer because the less you question, the more she can hide. But make no mistake, the root of all that criticism is guilt. Her words are not about you. They are about her attempt to shield herself from the truth. It's also important to notice that this criticism is inconsistent. In good moments, she may act sweet, affectionate, even overly caring. But the moment a question threatens her cover, the claws come out. She attacks quickly and harshly, then later may pretend nothing happened. This inconsistency is confusing, but it's also revealing. Genuine love doesn't swing between tenderness and hostility without reason. Guilt does. The key lesson here is simple. When criticism replaces conversation, something deeper is happening. A faithful woman, even if she feels slightly irritated by questions, will still offer reassurance because she values trust in the relationship. But an unfaithful woman will constantly twist the dialogue, making her partner feel like the villain for even asking. That's the power of guilt expressed through criticism. It's disguised as strength, but in reality, it's weakness. Stability is trust. It's the weakness of someone who knows the truth, but doesn't have the courage to face it. Words like, "You don't trust me," or "You're just insecure," sound ordinary. But when they're repeated often and delivered with sharpness, they carry a hidden meaning. They are shields, weapons, and distractions all at once. And if you learn to hear them for what they are, you'll realize they're not signs of your flaws. They're confessions of hers.